Hey everyone, I just want to take a moment here to go over the next thing we want to cover in language arts or English language arts, and that is writing a persuasive paragraph or a persuasive essay. And what we want to do is we want to go over the necessary steps that you would need to take in order to produce a piece of writing that clearly communicates your thoughts on a specific topic. All right, let's get into what exactly is persuasive writing. So when we're trying to persuade, when we're doing persuasive writing, we're trying to get someone to take on our viewpoints, or at least maybe be more accepting of our viewpoints, or try to convince them to accept our viewpoints. So I'm going to go over this sheet that you've received, and if you do not have this sheet, you can get in touch with me and I'll get it to you. But this sheet, it says, at a young age, we have begun to develop our skills in the area of being persuasive. And I'm just going to summarize it, not necessarily read this over. So as a young child, you would probably have been asked, hey, get ready for bed. And you'd be telling your parents, I don't want to go to bed. And your parents would say, absolutely no discussion, get to bed. And then you'd start playing the game. And the game would be, but Mom, I'm hungry. Or Dad, I'm hungry. And your parents would say, all right, grab a quick snack. And then you'd have the quick snack. And then your parents would be like, okay, you've had your snack, get to bed. But then I need a drink now. I need a drink. Okay, have a quick drink. Have a drink. Then you'd go have a drink. And then after that, they'd be like, okay, now you've had your snack, you've had your drink, get to bed. And you'd be like, but now I need to brush my teeth, don't I? Well, of course you need to brush your teeth, because if you don't, you're going to go to bed with stuff in your teeth. And the next thing you know, eventually over time, with you doing this every single night, you're going to have some problems with your teeth. So your parents will let you do that. Next thing you know, you've now extended your bedtime by 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. So when we are now looking at writing a persuasive piece, we want to be able to play to our audience and try to convince our audience that what we're saying is important and worth taking note of. When we're writing a persuasive piece or a persuasive paragraph or essay, we need to include the following. So one of the things we need to include is an introduction. So in our introduction, we want to make sure that we're making it clear to the person that's listening to us or the person that's reading our report or our essay. We want to make it clear to them what exactly it is that we are trying to discuss. What is the topic that we will be discussing? What argument are we presenting? Then the second thing that we will have are our supporting sentences right here. And so the supporting sentences are basically written to support our main argument. So we want to be able to tell the person, here's the reason why you need to consider the viewpoint that I am addressing in my work. Okay, the third part is really important, and it connects very well with the supporting sentences. And in this part, what you are looking at is a strategy. So when you're constructing your persuasive paragraph or your persuasive essay, you want to strategically put it together, put the pieces together so that you have a really, really strong argument. Often we'll compare this part of the essay to a band taking the stage. When they take the stage, they have a set list that's planned. The first song is a song that gets the crowd into the concert. And then the songs that follow are songs that they feel are strong and they feel that they're good and are engaging and the audience will appreciate them. And then they arrive at the last song, and the last song is again another song that gets the crowd into it because it's another song that they're very familiar with. So at the end of the concert, the people will leave and they won't necessarily know what the fifth or the sixth or the eighth song were, but they'll know the first and the last because they're both super memorable. So when we are writing this, we want to make sure that we are creating memorable points because we're trying to get people to take on our perspective or to adopt our perspective. So when we're writing, we want to also make sure that we are presenting our arguments in such a way that it's going to be memorable for our reader. Okay, the conclusion is typical of any sort of writing that we would do. It's basically a summary of our main argument. We want to make sure that we just reiterate or we retell or summarize what it is that we were saying. I would definitely encourage you to read this page from start to finish and highlight any points that you feel are important and worth noting. In your notes, you've also received a page that looks like this that says, persuade me, tell us what you think. And here you'll find an article that is talking about how watching too much television can be detrimental to young people. So if you take a look at this article, you'll see that there's an introduction to the topic. Then there's a reason why young people should watch less television. There's a second reason. And then down here, you'll see finally a third reason. And then an in conclusion where they wrap up the topic, okay? So this is a good thing for you to read. It's a very simple example of how you could use this approach we're going through to create a piece of writing that would be considered persuasive. Okay. Whenever I'm required to write something that is longer than a few sentences, I like to actually use an outline. And so here's an example of a really good outline that I highly recommend, and it's called the 3-point model. And when you're using this model, what you want to do is you want to then determine what's your topic going to be, write your topic here. You want to then think about how you can introduce this topic. There's many ways that you can do it. You can be really clever and introduce it in an artistic way, or you could just be very matter of fact and say it is the purpose of this paper to discuss and then get into your topic. Then this part's really important for you to fill in with as much detail as possible. So you want to come up with 3 topics that you can, or subtopics that you can talk about that address the main topic. And so you're going to come up with a bunch of information here for each of them that you can then address throughout your writing. So the better your notes are in this section, the better you're going to be able to communicate your thoughts and opinions. It is here where you're going to share your personal thoughts. So you're going to then consider the evidence that you've presented and then sort of give them your own personal take and try to convince them that they should also maybe adopt or at least consider your views. Or the final part of our model is the conclusion. It is here that we will then remind the reader about our 3 points that we have addressed. And it's our hope that we've done it well enough that they will consider our viewpoint and maybe even take on our viewpoint in the future. Here's the 3-point model that I like to use, and I made this model in Google Slides. I chose Google Slides because, well, for one, it's free, and the other, it's easy to make accessible to my students. And the other thing I like about it is that I can adjust the text boxes, adjust their color, I can add a stroke to them, I can move them to my liking on the page, and it's very easy to use, and I can type directly into the model itself. I've shared this model with you through Google Classroom, so you're more than welcome to use that. However, if you do not have access to Google Classroom, then you'll have to probably draw this out on a piece of paper. I also made a video that tells you how to make this particular model using Google Slides. Feel free to check it out. Now that you have your outline ready to go, what you need to do is start conducting some research. So you want to develop some familiarity with the topic that you're going to be addressing, trying to find out as much information as you can and become somewhat of an expert on the topic. For this example, let's use school uniforms as our topic of choice. So what I could do is I could go in and I could type in the pros and cons of school uniforms and come across a website, something like this. And as I go through this, I can see that it's listed a number of pros, and in my research, I would read this over. I would record any information that I felt was really beneficial to the stance that I was required to take, or the stance that I personally believe in. And after I've done this research, I will then look over the notes that I've taken and decide what my 3 strongest points are. Those 3 points then will be highlighted or will be addressed in the subtopics of my 3-point model. So for school uniforms, I might want to fill this model in the following way. My topic is school uniforms. My subtopic would be identification, or helps with identification. So it helps them identify intruders on the campus. They identify students when they're on field trips. So those could be beneficial, and then I could expand on those even more. This is just a simple example. I don't want to really do the work for you if you choose to write about this topic at some point. Students look the same. There isn't pressure to dress a specific way. It allows students that can't afford to keep up with the trends to still feel part of the school's class culture. That's important. And the last one that I talked about would be creates a sense of order. Studies show, and this is where I give them the final punch, where there's some emphasis on this point, because I can use research to back this. It says studies show that students behave better. Students score better on tests. Their attendance improves, and there's less pressure on how they are perceived by others, and a greater emphasis is on their performance. And I could then footnote this. I can, provide various articles and various references from doctors and psychologists and all those things, and I can create a pretty strong final point. Then when I go to my personal thoughts, I'll then, use one of those think statements that don't carry a lot of weight, but when we back it up with evidence, we're going to now make ourselves sound like we are an expert and our opinion matters. And then lastly, we have our conclusion, and it is here where we provide a summary of what it is that we've already brought to their attention through our subtopics. For today's lesson, what we want to do is conduct some research on the dangers of smoking. We want to write a persuasive essay on the dangers of smoking. Our goal is to encourage people to quit smoking or discourage them from ever taking up the habit. When dealing with the topic of smoking, we could probably start brainstorming right away without doing too much research. However, it would probably be to our benefit to do a little bit of research on the dangers of smoking beforehand. But sometimes it's good to maybe brainstorm what are some of the things that we might want to investigate ahead of time, because the topic may be quite grand. There might be a lot that we can address, and we want to put some limitations on our research so that we're able to get this done, really is what it is. All right. Now, if I had an opportunity to ask each and every one of you to share with me or share with the class what you think we should include in our persuasive writing, we probably have a number of different things mentioned. So here's just a guess of what some of the things might be that would be suggested by our class. Things might be like health concerns, why do people start smoking, how much money it costs, advertisements that are targeting children or kids, the number of deaths caused by this, addiction, maybe even difficulty quitting, marketing, which would also be tied to targeting kids, chemicals found within cigarettes, why are they not banned, secondhand smoke, and lastly, the diseases that are associated with smoking. We have a lot of material here that we could potentially research. And with that being said, we don't really want to produce an essay that has 15 paragraphs. I don't know what the number is there, I'm guessing. 15 paragraphs and maybe even additional paragraphs, because we might need to elaborate even more on some of these topics. So what we want to do is we want to narrow this down. So we have to look at this and we have to determine what can we do to break this down. So we can start looking at this and going, are there any things here that are similar? And one of the things that I mentioned was targeting kids and marketing. So those might be an area that can be tied together. Another area might be the fact that we have dangers of secondhand smoke, we have diseases, number of deaths and all these things, and those could all be part of health concerns, right? And then lastly, maybe we could talk about chemicals, because that's a big thing on its own that many of us are very familiar with. So we can see that we could take all this information and break it down. So here is an example of it all broken down. We have health concerns, diseases, secondhand smoke, how many deaths or number of deaths. Then we have why people start, the addictive part of it, addiction, difficulty quitting. We have marketing and targeting kids all together. And then lastly, we could have chemicals and why aren't cigarettes banned based on the chemicals we find in them. And then lastly, there's a money piece here, which could probably go somewhere like, why do you want to start a habit that's going to cost you, $15 a day or whatever cigarettes cost. All right, so after we've brainstormed and we've taken all of our ideas and we've now grouped them where we would like them, we would want to then start doing some research. And after we've done our research, we would then look at that look at the information that we've acquired, and we would then determine, what are the 3 things that we want to actually include on our outline. Here's an example of my outline now for the topic. So I'm addressing dangers of smoking, and I've narrowed down my subtopics to why people start, chemicals found in cigarettes, and the impact on health, or its impact on health. So here's where I will start filling in the information that I acquire. All right. When you approach this topic, you will find that subtopic 2, or at least subtopic 2 on my outline, will pose some challenges for you, because you're going to see that there's an overwhelming number of chemicals found in cigarettes. This next slide here kind of shows just a quick little list here of some of the main ones that you would find. So you would have acetone, acetic acid, ammonia, arsenic, benzene, butane, cadmium, carbon monoxide, formaldehyde, hexamine, all these different things, methanol, nicotine, tar, and a list goes on. This is just some of them. All right. When you are writing your paragraph or your series of paragraphs about the chemicals found in cigarettes, you do not want to create a bulleted list like this and tell people, here's what you find, here's what you find, here's what you find. What will happen is it's going to be very formulaic, and it will not be very enjoyable to read. So what you want to do is you want to pick the chemicals that you found made your jaw drop and go, oh my goodness, I can't believe that that is in a cigarette. I am never, ever going to have one of those. The other topics are sort of no-brainers. You can just look up stuff. And again, I guess impact on health too. You don't want to list a whole bunch of things here. You want to talk about the ones that are disturbing, the ones that are going to make people go, wow, I never really realized that smoking was this dangerous. All right. We know cigarette manufacturers are very clever in how they market their brands. They're making things appealing to young people. This is just a tangent right now, but if you look at all the vaping that's going on nowadays, they're making vaping look cool. You hold this little metal cylindrical object. It's got LED lights on it. It looks cool, and it smells nice. And young people are going, that's so cool. I'm going to do that. Not really. All right. So that's just a side note. Personal Thoughts by Greg White. Is at this time, if you haven't made a chart already, or you haven't downloaded the chart that I've made available to you, that you pause this video and get one made.
Lungs are like sponges, designed to soak up air. But some people use their lungs to soak up cigarette smoke. If you could wring out the cancer-producing tar that goes into the lungs of a pack-a-day smoker every year, this is how much you'd get. It's enough to make you sick. Very sick.
After watching that commercial, there was a couple of things that stood out to me. And one of the things was the statement where the narrator says, lungs are like sponges. They're designed to soak up air. And then he goes on to say that a person who smokes a pack a day has a half a cup of cancer-producing tar in their lungs. So if I go to my outline, what I would want to do is I want to find a short way to write it so I'm not writing big, long sentences. So you can see I kind of used point form. And even my point form is not maybe as much point form as it should be. But I have lungs, sponge-like, soak up air. And then I have 1 year, pack-a-day smoker, cup of cancer-producing tar in their lungs. Keep your notes simple. I urge you to keep your notes simple, because if you do that, it's highly unlikely that you'll plagiarize somebody else's work. To help you complete this assignment, I have collected a number of commercials for you to view, and each of these commercials presents some pretty interesting information on the topic, so it'll be up to you to extract the information from each commercial and apply it to your outline where it's appropriate. As we go to watch these videos, I need to let you know that some of the images, some of the stories that are going to be shared in the commercials are quite disturbing and quite sad. So please keep that in mind and feel free to skip any of the commercials that you feel make you feel uncomfortable.